I paid thousands of dollars in courses to learn what you're basically teaching on your podcast for free. What you're putting out there is so valuable. So, I just really want to acknowledge you, and I definitely send everyone to your podcast.
You were virtually one of the first mentors that I looked up to and started following. You're always one step ahead of the game. So I just wanted to give you kudos and props for that, because lots of people are watching, lots of people are learning from it.
Tucker and the whole TTM crew, Dan and Chris, thanks so much for your support. I love what you guys do, and a huge, huge fan. Having this support's huge. So I'm grateful for that.
What is up, everybody out there in listener land? This is episode 338, and I am your host with a very raspy voice this week, Tucker Merrihew. I want to thank you guys for joining me for a smoky week down here in Portland, and more specifically in the Oregon area. If you have not seen, there's been a lot of stuff on the news, but I'll get into that here in just a second. One thing I did want to say is, depending on when you're listening to this, you may have already been able to hear my presentation at the Big Badass Virtual Wealth Expo or Real Estate Expo this week. Friday at 1:30 p.m. Is when I take the virtual stage. Unfortunately, I was unable to go up there. I just got a lot going on, which I'll go into here in just a second, like I mentioned, but I'm doing the presentation remotely. We're actually manning our Driving for Dollars booth remotely. Pretty cool. It's called a WOVA app, I believe is how you pronounce it. But anyway, it's a pretty cool app to manage basically going to virtual events, and then also on the vendor side and the speaker side, interacting with people. So I've been interacting with people all day long since our booth is live, and it's pretty cool. But that aside, if you have not got your tickets already, well, I'll probably put the replay for my talk tomorrow, probably on next week's podcast, something like that, so you guys can hear it. I got a really cool presentation put together all about kind of the ins and outs of direct seller marketing and everything that you need to do these days in order to generate lead flow and deal flow, because let's face it, it's a highly competitive market, and this year took a weird turn, right? We had Corona kind of dropped a bomb on us, and then everybody, for the most part, froze both buying and selling a home. Well, on the back end of this whole Corona thing, which I can't say we're totally on the back end yet, but on the back end, buying activity went off the charts. Seller activity was still very limited, so we have a super low amount of inventory out there, and we have a lot of buyers, and so things are just bananas right now. We had a house that we put on the market about a week ago, and we're actually at over ask on the accepted offer about, I don't know, 5-6 days into being on market, something like that. And we had a bunch of other interested parties as well, so that one blew up. We've got another deal right now that we're about to ink for somewhere around $3.2 million, which is a big deal for us here down in Portland. Some of you guys may not sound like a huge price point. Other of you guys, it might sound like a ginormous price point, but it's big for us here, and we're excited about that. And we got a bunch of other stuff in the works too. So a lot of things going on, but inventory is tight, let me tell you. I'm actually placing 1031 exchange money right now as well. And it was a bit of a kind of, well, what am I going to do with this money? Fortunately for us, we have a marketing machine, so I was able to pluck one of the deals out of our marketing machine. And now I've got a place for that 1031 money to land also. So excited about that. But either way, we got a lot going on. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that this week because I wanted to give you guys a recap of basically what in the world is going on here in Oregon, and more specifically in the Portland area. Well, we'll just say Oregon overall, because the what's happening is affecting most of Oregon, at least the westerly side of Oregon, and then of course the smoke is affecting almost all of Oregon. But we've had kind of a crazy run. Obviously we all dealt with Corona over the past, let's call it 6 months. I did a show, I don't know, maybe like a month ago, something like that, that was basically what's going on with Portland, right? Because we had all these protests, and I wanted to give you guys some kind of pre-story to where we were at today in terms of the leadership and how we got so many homeless people in our city and how we got so much just riffraff and issues and drugs and all that, right? I wanted to kind of lay the foundation so you guys could really understand my position and understand how the city got to where it is. Well, on this week's show, because we're in the news again, and there's so much going on the wildfire, we'll call it, front, although some of the fires are not wildfires. I wanted to kind of use this platform and give you guys kind of the truth, so to speak, of those people that are here local that are willing to at least open their eyes and, soak in all of the information that's out there at this point and go, what in the hell is actually going on? And hopefully you guys get some, maybe not enjoyment out of it, but you get educated and you get an opinion of somebody who's on the inside of the beast, we'll call it, in terms of how it is that I see things. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% right, but I will say that I'm pretty damn close, especially at this point. I wanted to wait to record the show until later in the week just to see if anything else came out that may contradict what it is that I've kind of put together at this point. And at this point, there's nothing. So I'm pretty sure that the way that I pieced this whole thing together is likely the way it is. And I'm not going to go too deep down conspiracy rabbit holes or anything like that. I'm just going to give you guys basic facts and kind of paint the overall picture of what happened.
All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did.
What I want to do is take you guys back to Sunday, September 6th. That was the day I was actually in my backyard. There was some kids over. They were swimming in the pool. I was about to fire up the barbecue. I was getting like hot dog hamburger counts from all the kids and everybody that was there. I go inside, basically get the stuff ready. I look outside a couple minutes later, and it was like all hell broke loose. There was crap flying in the air like I've never seen. Like the trees were dumping branches and little pine cones and pine needles, and anything that could be shaken out of trees was flying sideways across the sky. And the pool was basically filled with crap, like just instantaneously. And the kids, literally, we had to like run them out of the pool and get them under cover. I couldn't even like clean the pool. I had to just cover it. It went from totally calm to just crazy with the wind. And the other thing was it was like 95 degrees. So it was super hot, and then the wind kicked up. And then what happened over the course of that next 12 hours is, the wind blew, a lot of trees went down. Supposedly a whole bunch of power lines went down as well. And with that, a bunch of fires started. And so to be exact, the number of fires were 37 fires, or fairly close to that, within a 24-hour period of time. Notable fires. I'm not talking about just a little, flare-up here that gets put out. I'm talking about notable fires that were around both Portland metro area down to Salem, over to the coast, up towards the Cascades. Just crazy number. And then fast forward another 12 hours. There were cities like Detroit Lake, Lyons, Mill City. All those are kind of on the way out of Salem as you head over the mountains and you head to Bend, which obviously one of my more favorite places. All those towns burned to the ground, absolutely just destroyed. All the houses. Actually, one of my family friends had a house in Detroit. He got out, burned all of his cars, burned his house, burned everything. And so now you've got these cities up there that are basically leveled. You've got, black timber everywhere. It's just terrible. But then those fires started to continue to, grow and increase in size, and it got crazy, and they started evacuating. There were 500,000 people that were put either on notice or were evacuated. So there wasn't 500,000 total evacuated, but there was up to 500,000 people that were either put on notice that they were going to need to evacuate or had been evacuated. And so at a certain point, a lot of our subs that work for us had been evacuated. We actually used a number of our houses that are kind of sitting vacant at the moment, pre-rehab, pre-redevelopment. And we put up some people in both of those houses. We allowed them to park their trailers out front. It was just a mess. And, there was just a lot of people homeless. It was a very, very strange time. And these fires just got out of control super quick. But then something strange happened. That Tuesday, there were some kind of whisperings on the street, and I put a social media post out about it. But basically, that Tuesday, there were people that came out and started saying, and these were valid reports. I mean, the first report that I got was, from a Clackamas County fire chief. So it was firsthand information that basically said some of these fires were started by arson. Now, one of them, obviously, the one that burned those cities that I talked about, that was a pre-existing burning fire that our governor decided not to extinguish and let burn. And then when the winds came in, it turned into a monstrous fire and it destroyed all those towns. So that's a whole other topic with her failed leadership. But basically, a lot of these other fires, of the 37, or let's call it 36 other fires, many of them, the word were started by arson. And I don't have an exact number, and I'm not going to say the majority, but there were some that were definitely started by arson. And so the word on that started to go and circle around social media, and people started putting posts out there. And the strangest thing started happening. It was very bizarre, but a lot of people, including Facebook was censoring a lot of people that were saying this stuff. In fact, I know one person whose husband actually chased some arsonists off of his property, and then he posted a video about it, and Facebook took the video down and said that fact checkers proved him wrong. So for any guys that watched The Social Dilemma this past week, because it's been a big thing that's been pushed around, one thing they didn't mention is that fact-checking by the social media platforms is probably the biggest thing that we need to worry about moving forward, because who are they to, check facts on things, right? They're not necessarily the experts, but it's probably a better world if you could put everything out there and then let you, the consumer, decipher what's true and what's false versus them deciphering it for you, because that leaves room for corruption, let's say, room for their interpretation of what they want reality to be. But back to my point is that we started seeing these reports come out about arson, and people on the internet, specifically on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, were saying, oh, don't believe it. If you believe that or you post that, you're just into conspiracy theories, and, don't be furthering conspiracy theory talk. And in fact, Joni, my wife, put a post out there, and she actually had a gal that sent her this long message just tearing her a new one about how she's furthering this conspiracy theory issue and it's not helping society and blah, 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 right? Which, take it however you want, but, she was definitely being more righteous than she probably needed to be at the time. But also bear in mind that this was kind of at the beginning stages of these fires and not a whole lot of information had come out yet. Well, then that next morning, after this stuff started to come out, or that evening, I should say, there's an island called Elk Rock Island that's just basically on the Willamette River. It's an island with no power lines, no people, no nothing. And this island lit on fire on two sides at the same time. And there was a lot of people kind of around the island that live on both sides of the river that have pictures of it and video. And that, for me, was where I was like, how does an island with nothing around it light on fire on two sides at the same time? And then it lit on fire again the following day, so twice in 24 hours, right? But the first time is what kind of tipped me off to the fact that there was definitely a lot of arson activity going on. And so it was just strange because a lot of people didn't want to believe it, and they pushed back against it like really hard. And there's still people right now that are like pushing back against it, saying that it was high winds and, it's whatever, all kinds of reasons why there may have been fires that have nothing to do with arson, right? Which is just crazy. So soon enough after that, well, I shouldn't say soon enough. For a while after that, Facebook was still removing posts. They were, basically saying, fact-checking, saying, no, that's not true if you put up stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm hearing constant stream of stories about people catching arsonists. I mean, hell, there was a shootout on a person's property. Another one actually held an arsonist to the ground with a gun until the cops came. There were all these legitimate, real stories that happened, but as they were circulating on the internet and, kind of playing the game of telephone, people were kind of saying, oh, it's just conspiracy theories and, you shouldn't say those things. Well, finally, after a few more days, because the news would say nothing about this. They would absolutely say nothing. And in fact, they came out and said that, there really hasn't been anything to confirm that any of this is arson and blah, 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 when the truth is that there's been a ton of arson. But they wouldn't say it. And so if the news didn't say it, people didn't want to believe it, right? Well, then finally some arrests started to get made, which was a big thing and kind of in the validation column for those of us that were like, well, duh, we got all these people saying that they're catching people or they're seeing people throwing Molotov cocktails out their car, trying to start fires. I had my sewer guy, who basically I had to let stay in one of my houses. His good friend, who he lives near, basically went back to check on his house because he'd been evacuated. And when he did that, he saw this guy rip down the street on a motorcycle. And as he did it, he was shooting flares into a Christmas tree farm, trying to light it on fire. And then he saw a cop come right behind him, chasing the guy down. It was like Point Break style, just ripping around on this motorcycle, getting away from the cops, trying to light these fields on fire. So there's just countless stories like this coming out, and legitimate stories, but yet the news wasn't reporting it. Facebook was taking these down, and people were saying that it was a conspiracy theory. So it's just the most bizarre thing ever. And then I actually had a family member who ran 3 people off their property that basically said that they were fishing, and then after they left them alone, they then tried to start a fire in that same location, and fortunately the fire didn't take, but they lit off a bunch of fireworks, in a heavily wooded, brushed area, trying to basically, turn the Willamette River into a fire, kind of in the Gladstone area. So there was a first-hand account right there, and then they saw him, book ass to a car and take off, and there were other reports of that same car doing same things around town. So all kinds of stuff, just absolutely crazy. And then the worst part came. Then there was looting that started to take place, and the looting happened in the areas where people had been evacuated, which is like the worst crime ever, right? There's arson, which is obviously terrible, and then there's people needing to evacuate because of fires and arson. We'll call it natural fires and arson-induced fires. And then when they leave their house vacant, you had all these tweakers and, you can't say Antifa people because nobody can prove that they're Antifa people, but you basically have a bunch of anarchist types, let's call them, and tweakers that are going and robbing these houses. So you got people that are staying back in evacuated areas to protect their houses. You've got people putting signs up that says, you loot, we shoot, all over the place in Estacada and around Malala and some places like that. So it just got crazy, right? And so eventually the news started to report that. They also reported that, a certain area caught some people trying to light something on fire. There was a lot of looting in that area. And so a lot of the neighbors in that area set up a checkpoint not to let people in and out of these small neighborhoods unless you had a valid reason to be there. The news came on and said that you can't do that because that's illegal, and you can't stop somebody and tell them they can't go somewhere if you're not law enforcement, when really all these people are doing is trying to protect their communities. So again, just another very bizarre thing. The news came out and said that you can't do this, but they're not going to report on, the potential arson that was happening. Or the looting that was happening. Eventually, they did finally, report on the looting, and now, a week or so later, they have kind of a little bit reported on the arson and the arsonist's arrest. And one in particular that really didn't gain a lot of traction on the news, but it's one that just blows my mind, is that there was a guy that was arrested a week ago Thursday for lighting a fire or trying to light a fire. They extinguished it, but they caught him, and they arrested him under arson charge. He was actually released the following morning on $1,000 bail. And then that next night, he was picked up for trying to start 6 more fires, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me. So, basically our DA was not taking charges of arson very seriously in a time where we had a lot of arson activity. So just crazy. It's been an absolutely crazy week. On top of that, Antifa did claim that they were responsible for at least some of the fire activity on their Twitter account, but nobody wants to talk about that because we can't, it's apparently not PC to say that. But for those of you guys that, don't know what Antifa is, I know they don't have like their own playing cards or anything like that, but it's basically anarchists. It's basically people that are just they say they're anti-fascist. That's their kind of tagline, but really they're just anarchists, and they're people that just like to destroy things. They don't like to build things back. And there's been a pretty big presence of those types of people that were down at the protests over the last 100+ nights too, which, by the way, the protests stopped when all of this started. So who knows, right? I'll let you guys kind of connect the dots on that if you want to. Now, here's a couple other things that I found rather interesting. Number one is the state fire chief was put on leave in the middle of all of this, right? We took basically the guy that's in charge of all the firemen in the entire state, and we put him on leave in the middle of this huge disaster, which seemed crazy to me. And then after they put him on leave, he quit because he was so pissed off. Seems strange, right? There was another state trooper that was about 20 days away from retirement, and they got him on video. Somebody was doing a live stream on YouTube and basically getting his thoughts on how a lot of these fires were starting and the arson activity. And he basically said, yeah, from their intel they have, it looks like that Antifa is tied into this in some way, shape, or form. And, there's a lot of people running around out there, basically causing havoc and starting fires through arson and other things. And so once that video went out, they put him on leave, right? So again, just very bizarre stuff. I've never seen anything like this in terms of controlling a narrative to the point that it's being controlled. And then on top of that, having people just blindly follow that narrative, right? And I'm not saying you got to follow what I say 100% and say that it's the gospel by any means, but these people would follow the narrative and not even question it, right? They wouldn't dig in and try and find information and validate stories and talk to people that are in infected areas, that have been evacuated or their homes have burned, and what they saw, and the things that their neighbors have been doing, and all of that stuff. They blindly followed what it is the news says they should believe, and it's just crazy, man. It's crazy. In a week where that show came out, The Social Dilemma, to see that actually transpire on something as big of a scale as this, and really just see people not think for themselves that much, is just crazy. So anyway, that's my little soapbox rant there. But where are we at now, right? So for the last few days, we've basically been, we've had toxic levels of smoke in town, all around town, basically all of Western Oregon here and Central Oregon as well. We haven't been able to go outside for, I don't even know how many days now. People have been getting headaches. There's been all kinds of ER visits. Like, it's just horrible. You got to walk around with a mask if you go anywhere. It's just horrible. So we're hoping that it rains here in the next, 24 hours or so and kind of flushes out some of the smoke. But it's been absolutely the most apocalyptic thing I've ever witnessed or been a part of in my entire life. And it's been a hell of a year, right? We got Corona, we had all the protests in Portland. Now we got these fires that are, arguably the worst fires collectively that we've ever seen in our state's history. We've got towns that have been around forever that have just been wiped off the map. And so this brings me to kind of, where do we go from here, right? How does this affect us in the world of real estate? And so depending on how much of, the surrounding areas those fires actually burned, obviously that eliminates a lot of housing. And so now we're in a situation where a lot of these towns are non-existent, right? Detroit Lake, gone. The guy that I know that lived up there, he's moving to another town and he's going to buy another house because he can't move back there. So you have all these people that have been displaced, and now they're going to be moving to areas that didn't burn. And so we've already got low inventory. We've already got extremely high demand and low supply. And now you have all these people that have been displaced that need to find new places to live. And so ultimately, I think all this is going to do is just increase the amount of demand for our local real estate market, both on a rental level and on a purchase level. One of the houses that we had go pending over the weekend, one of the other buyers that were looking at it had a home that was about to burn in the Sandy area, and they said that they just wanted to write a check for our house because they wanted to make sure they had another house to go to. So again, you got all these people, where are they going to go, right? And so they're going to go to the areas that didn't get burned or didn't get affected by the fires so that they can kind of live a somewhat normal life again, once all the smoke clears here. So it's been a very strange week, week and a half here. Never seen anything like it in my life, and that's kind of what I've seen from the inside. There was definitely arson activity. There was a lot of collective assholes out there lighting fires. Never seen anything like that. I've seen the occasional arsonist going around lighting fires. There's one in Central Oregon, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that they caught that was running up and down the highway between Lapine and Bend lighting those fires. But I've never seen so many a-holes come out of the woodwork together to do this. And it just seems strange. It seems strange that it's that organized and there's that many of them. And there's that much looting on the heels of the evacuations. And there's that much, shielding by the media and our politicians of any correlations or any ties to any one organization or even just arson in general. So anyway, I implore you to ask some questions. I implore you to read everything that you can. There's a string that I posted on Facebook, if it doesn't get taken down, which basically just, I don't give a ton of opinion. I just post a lot of articles, a lot of information of what's gone on. And, if you read a lot of that and read through it, you guys can kind of come to your own conclusion in terms of what's going on and ultimately what the truth is. Who knows? We may never get the actual truth on this one. But at the end of the day, what happened is absolutely horrible. One of the biggest tragedies that our state has ever had in terms of the amount of towns lost. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a ton of life lost, but people's lives have been upended. There's no question about that. And so, anyway, it's been a sad week here for Oregon. I'm hoping that the smoke clears here soon enough and we can kind of start to put the pieces back together. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the real estate market. We'll see what happens. We'll see how this affects Oregon moving forward. Probably long run, probably not too much. But as just another thing this year, it's a lot. It definitely is a lot. So anyway, that's kind of the sad story of what's gone on over the last week or so here in Portland. But on a plus note, if you check out my presentation this week at the Big Badass Real Estate Virtual Expo, drop me a line, leave me a comment, let me know how you guys like it, and I'll probably run that on next week's show. But anyway, now you know what's going on behind the curtain here in Portland and in Oregon. Make sure to read as much as you can on it if you're interested, and come to your own conclusions. And send me a message if you do. I'd love to hear what you guys think. All right, guys, that wraps up this week's show. We'll get back to some real estate stuff next week, but like I said, I wanted to use this platform for some good and get this out there, and hopefully more of you guys hear about it, and you can kind of come to your own conclusion. All right, guys, see you on the next one.